Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons Manic Panic competitors. And specifically those three competitors, in my humble opinion, are Tales of the Valiant, Draw Steel. Tales of the Valiant by, I believe it's Cobalt Press, did Tales of the Valiant. And then Draw Steel by MCDM Studios, I believe. And then finally, Daggerheart by Critical Role. So let's talk about what a Manic Panic competitor is. So first of all, Dungeons & Dragons is pretty much the end-all be-all of tabletop role-playing games. It does more than all of its competitors combined. It's very significant, and literally the rest of the industry struggles to even match D&D on its worst day, right? So in 1983, Dungeons & Dragons survived the Satanic Panic. And actually that went between 1983 up to about 1987. And then in 2023, there was the Manic Panic. So it was, so Hasbro decided to change the OGL, and it was a huge crisis, and people got really upset, and people tried, just like they did in 1983 under the Satanic Panic, to literally say no one's allowed to read, own, buy, participate in Dungeons & Dragons. The group was completely different. The method was completely different, except burning books. Burning books was the same between both. In 1983, they physically burned books. In 2023, they digitally burned books. But the Manic Panic is an echo of the Satanic Panic. Two separate attempts to literally wipe Dungeons & Dragons off the face of the earth. Now, all three of those companies I just talked about were all boisterous and loud during the Manic Panic, right? And saying, hey, you need to move away from Dungeons & Dragons. And all three, and in my humble opinion, all three of these are Manic Panic competitors. These are products that were announced during or directly after the Manic Panic in a time when people thought Dungeons & Dragons would fall, right? And all three of these were supposed to replace Dungeons & Dragons, right? So, Tales of the Valiant, Draw Steel, and finally, Daggerheart. All were supposed to be freestanding with their own rules and supply you with everything that Dungeons & Dragons supplies you, and were both supposed to be direct competitors that enjoyed the impetus, the turbo boost, the momentum of anger toward Dungeons & Dragons. Now, here we are. That was in January of 2023. Now, here we are in November of 2024, and where did it all land? Well, here we go. So, Tales of the Valiant is already DOA. It's delivered. Nobody cares. I think its Kickstarter was outperformed by Shadow Dark. Kelsey Dion's Shadow Dark. It just fell flat. Went nowhere. Tales of the Valiant, terrible name, middling rules, nothing really distinct, no excitement emerged, and no real support survived to the point where Tales of the Valiant came out. The one thing Tales of the Valiant did do was it actually got out the door first, right? So Tales of the Valiant is ahead of both Daggerheart and Draw Steel, right? So Tales of the Valiant already delivered, fully dead on arrival, in my humble opinion, a big old nothing burger. All right, let's talk about Draw Steel. So Draw Steel, that's Matt Colville's baby, and pretty much, and there's strong, and here's the evidence, in my humble opinion, that Draw Steel may never even see print, right? And even if it sees print, it will never function as a competitor to Dungeons & Dragons. So if you're going to be a competitor to Dungeons & Dragons, you certainly wouldn't be their ally, right? Am I right? All right. So if you're going to be a real competitor, right, you're not in their shop making content, right? And that's the issue. MCDM is literally now D&D partnered content, and basically Flea Mortals, and there's and there's one more book. But MCDM has literally taken their existing content and made it official D&D partnered content. And MCDM and Matt Colville get a check every month from Dungeons & Dragons. They are literally business partners, right? So you could take MCDM off the board. They're not a real competitor to Dungeons & Dragons. They're not a real competitor to Dungeons & Dragons creator Hasbro. They're literally a check receiver, right? They're paid. They're literally paid by the group they're supposed to defeat. I don't think so, right? If you're competing with somebody, you're not taking a check from them every month, right? You're literally being supported by them. You're not a threat to them in any way, right? The money flow is already determined. And so I think that takes Matt Colville, and I think that takes Draw Steel off the board, okay? Finally, Daggerheart, okay? So Daggerheart is Matthew Mercer's, and it's the last remaining hope of the Manic Panic crowd, right? Now, what happened to Daggerheart? All right, let's get into it. So first of all, Daggerheart also really appears to be not much of a threat. And why is that? Well, the biggest thing is the main creator of Daggerheart is already a failed creator, right? Candela Obscura has been an absolutely abysmal failure for Critical Role. Critical Role's Dungeons & Dragons 5e content, Critical Role's Dungeons & Dragons VE content has outperformed Candela Obscura by every metric. And the design for Daggerheart is coming from the same guy who wowed no one on Candela Obscura. And really, all he did was do a very bad rehash of the design that John Harper had already done on Blades in the Dark, right? So the designer is subpar, right, and is a track record loser at this point. Candela Obscura is a very bad, expensive failure on the part of Critical Role, and he's at the heart of Daggerheart, right? So everybody's like, ooh, is there going to be exciting new ideas? No, there's going to be rehashed John Harper ideas, right? Like, it's not going to be exciting. And then finally, Critical Role has had more and more massive success with everything connected to Dungeons & Dragons. So they have a Mighty Nine show on Amazon. They have a Vox Machina show already on Amazon with 3 completed seasons, and they're about to get a Mighty Nine show as well, right? So it doesn't behoove them to try to defeat the game that literally is at the heart of their greatest successes, right? And I think the best way to Daggerheart is not defeated. What's happened is Daggerheart has gotten caught up in the tsunami that is the Dungeons & Dragons VE, the 2024 core rulebook release, and so that just swept away. It just rolled Daggerheart, to the side, and everybody's like, "Where's Daggerheart?" We've been seeing so much news for Dungeons & Dragons 2024 core rulebooks. Is Daggerheart still around? And nobody knows, and nobody cares, right? And it's just been swept aside by the tsunami. It's possible that when it's delivered, it'll have some surprise in it, but it's highly unlikely because it doesn't have any creators connected to it who could bring an exciting new idea, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.